but it looks like we're right on track now.
Yeah.
I've got 6 o'clock, so why don't we just get started real quick? Again, we are recording and we are live on YouTube. So I did get a few messages from people who said that they will be joining a little bit later. So that's fine. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I have the pleasure today to welcome several of you. I do want to acknowledge and thank Commissioner Kennedy for joining us. We have Alessandro from Commissioner Sally Heyman's office with us as well. And I want to give a personal thank you to village resident Brian McNulty. He is the master when it comes to anything storm related. And so he's graciously taken out some of his personal time to be able to update his fellow residents. And this is the second year that we've done it. I think you've even done it more than just 2 times, but with me at least, this is the second go around. I do apologize that this is in early August instead of in May or June. There were some things on our end that scheduling wise, it just became a little bit of an issue. I also want to thank our police department. I know Chief is driving, trying to get to a stable location, so he's not going to be talking on the Zoom meeting for right now, but towards the end, hopefully he'll be able to participate. And Commander, just going to call him Commander Nick because I never want to butcher his name. So thank you all for joining us. Nick, why don't you take it away and just start with some of the information that the village has and the county has assisted and put together for us, and then we can let Brian steal the show.
As exactly what I was thinking. Why trample on the expert? I'm just going to touch on a few key points, hopefully not bring up too much of the same stuff that he isn't going to. Again, just real quick, thank you to the manager for putting this on, Chief Cabrera for, being a part of it with us and helping us each their way. And, like the manager said, Brian's always clutching this, he always comes through for us. So we appreciate that. I'm going to pop up a shared screen real quick. Is everyone able to see that?
Right. Yeah, Nick, we got it.
All right. First part of it is going to be just the way that the scale, the designation versus wind speed. Pretty sure everyone, if you've lived in Florida for longer than a hurricane season, you're very familiar with all these numbers. But any of the new residents, I'm sure we're going to have this video posted as well as the slides from it, so they can always make references back to it. Hurricane season's running through June 1st through November 30th. I don't know if Brian's going to touch on it. I know that there was some discussion about lengthening the season in the future. I don't think that they did that at this point. But this graph will take you all the way down from tropical depression starting at 38 miles an hour and going down. Tropical storms, category 1s, that's really when we always take note and monitor, but as everyone who, again, lives in Florida and lives through hurricane season, it's kind of hard to press something that's not a category 1 or 2 that people need to take it seriously, even though they do. Just some of the differences between watches and warnings. These, again, are terms that are thrown out there every hurricane season. Tropical storm watch, it's going to be expect tropical storm conditions, usually within 48 hours. Tropical storm warning, expect tropical storm conditions within 36 hours. And it's the same thing for the hurricanes. Basically, you're gonna hit your watch before you hit your warning. The warning is kind of impending, it's going to be here soon. So make your preparations. Pre-storm, these are just some of the things that residents should be doing and what the village staff will do. I can tell you personally, at this point, as of 2 months ago, I've already bought, a couple of cases of water and started to fill up other jugs of water, just because as you start to get closer into hurricane season and a storm actually approaching, you know that the shelves go bare. And that's really something that we want to avoid. What the residents should be doing pre-storm, again, gather your supplies, start to secure your home, whatever that may be. Bringing in furniture, strapping down things that you need to, securing your loose items around the home. If you have shutters, put them up. If you have impact windows, you're pretty good. Obviously, the least case scenario is plywood. And again, expect that the stores will go bare for that. You see it at Home Depot every year. Every year, they're already out there telling you who's price gouging and what stores are actually not, keeping up to stock anymore. Have a backup plan, very important, because best laid plans do not always work out. So have other friends in the area, outside the area, another county. It's very easy to go just 1 to 2 counties away, staying at a friend's house, and you're not even close to experiencing the devastation. I mean, I remember when Andrew hit, Homestead was demolished, but Broward was much more livable. So even something as simple as that is a good backup plan. Definitely do not start landscaping projects or start tree trimming when we start to say that we are in watches and mornings. That is not the time to start doing that. You should already begin to start trimming. Follow your bulk pickup schedule, make other plans. If the landscapers will haul the way for you, go with that. But it's not the time that we want to see stacks of coconuts and palm fronds out on swales. During the storm, you want to, just stay informed as much as possible, whether that's through village communications, your television, your radio. The more informed you can be, the better. So please do that. If flooding threatens your home, turn off electricity at the main breaker until you can ride out wherever you are with it to see where the level rises. There, you don't want to have water and electricity mixing. It's not a good thing. Use your flashlights, not candles or kerosene lamps, as your light sources. I can't stress this enough. If you are going to operate a generator, make sure it is secured in a fashion, whether it's chained down. We've seen them, because of the vibrations, start kicking down the street. Definitely not something that we want to do, but it's very important that you realize that you can't keep it inside your home or inside your garage. That we definitely don't want to be responding out to phone calls that have that case. Post-storm, stay indoors, until we can give the all clear with street clearings and stuff of that nature. It's really in your best interest. It's a lot easier for us as opposed to having cars driving around. We're either trying to trim trees, we're trying to do that push. There may be flooding in the area. As long as you can help us out, we greatly appreciate it. We promise that we will get the word out to you as soon as possible when it is safe to drive. We as the village, we're going to be assessing damage immediately. I mean, I know that the chief, the manager, myself, and the heavy rainstorm, we were all out there. So that's not something that you guys need to worry about. We will be assessing from the minute that the storm is taking place till we give, hey, everything's all clear, good to head out.
And I'm sorry to jump in the middle, Nick, and I know we weren't planning, but I wanted to take this moment to also mention a few things which I think are important. To reiterate what Nick said, I know the immediate urge is, okay, after the storm, let's go clear up the road. People have their own machetes or saws and start trying to cut all the trees down and all. We're going to ask that you don't do that. We have, there's very strict rules by what FEMA will allow us to do, and we need to take pictures and videos from a whole lot of different angles, because then when they come back to the village, they're going to say, you know, we see that you had X amount of trucks of, you know, vegetation. We want to see the tree that was on this street and stuff like that. So we need to make sure that we're able to document all that. On your own private property, you know, you want to do your cleanup, that's fine. The goal with our new contracts and everything we have is that they're going to start clearing the main roadways, at least one direction, within 24 hours. Then within 72 hours, we hope to have all the roads cleared and any vegetation pushed off to the public right away. And then they'll be picking everything up. After that, the village will be trying to communicate with everyone. And if I got to walk all the streets with a bullhorn or knock door to door, we'll do that. But then after we pick up everything that's in the public right away, we'll ask the residents if you have any debris from your private property to move it into the swale. And then we'll arrange for that to be picked up probably a couple days after the storm and the roadways are clear. That way, everything can be documented the right way. We can have all the pictures, the videos, the tags, the various reports that the contractors need to do so that the village can get all the proper refunding from FEMA or the federal government if the storm is too much. It's important that we follow this process because as we've seen in the past, these are very, very expensive processes and projects that are essentially happening simultaneously. And so for our little village, we want to take full advantage to make sure that that we are able to get reimbursed for all that, which is something that the state and federal government provides in these types of situations. So again, I know the immediate need is let's clear the street, let's go do it. But there is a process that we've come in place. We are ready. We've talked to all of our vendors. And so we'll be doing that. And then just recently, we even the village purchased a small drone. We're trying to get at least one or two of our staffers certified to be able to fly it. So that can make even a faster process for all that documentation. So again, a few days after the storm, we'll be communicating to all the village residents that they can move their debris into the swale so that our contractors can pick all that up from the swale. Our contractors cannot go onto private property. So if you can move it to the swale, we'll be able to pick it up for you and haul that away, okay? Sorry, Nick, for interrupting. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
All good. Just real quick on the post-storm report outages. You may think that, hey, if my whole block is out, someone's already called. Never hurts. Put in the phone call, 5-10 minutes. It's got a tag number. So worst case scenario is no one else has called. At least you are already on the books. Watch for safety advisories, boil waters, anything that they're going to tell you, hey, this is what you need to be doing. We have a pipe burst. We have, power outages. We have standing water. Obviously, you want to stay out of any type of standing water, whether or not you think that it is electrically charged or not. Disaster kits, pretty standard. Again, anything that you could possibly think about needing is going to be on this list. A couple of items that usually go overlooked, though, that I can think of is if you are going to pack canned goods, remember that you're going to need a manual can opener. It doesn't do you any good to have only an electrical can opener, and now you've got 3 to 4 days worth of canned food that you cannot use. Prescription medications, that's a very big one, because if you're packing up or you can't get to a Walgreens, CVS, Publix in the next couple of days, make sure that you're stocked to at least go, I would say, 5 to 7 days with your medications. Also, if you're going to evacuate, remember that that's something that you're going to want to need to bring with you. Obviously, your change of clothing, any type of portable electronic devices. If it needs batteries, get the batteries into it. If it's chargeable, charge everything. I personally invested in some solar powered USB chargers. That works great because you can just leave it out in the sun and you're good to go. If you have pets, remember that you need to prep for them as well as yourself. So whether it's evacuation or you're staying in your house, you're going to need to have plenty of food and drinking water for the dog, the cat, parakeets, whatever. It's always good to have a little bit of cash on hand. I know not everyone's traveling with, wads of cash anymore. Everything is pretty much debit cards and credit cards, but it never hurts to have, a couple $100 if you have that accessibility just to having cash. Garbage bags are tremendously underutilized. All you need is a couple of the big black industrial bags, contractor bags. You can wrap pretty much anything in 1 to 2 of those and it becomes waterproof. That we've seen to work out pretty easily. Evacuations with pets. Your main source is going to be miami-dade.gov 311. Awesome resource. If there's anything that you can think of, any questions that you have, 311 is the way to go. Know your zone. They usually code us the same as C and D, but check to make sure that, in the days following, for some reason, something hasn't changed. The county always does a great job with it. Sally Heyman's office offers us tremendous support, as she does with all of her other groups. And, we're tremendously grateful for that. And this is definitely a resource that you should be utilizing. They'll tell you once an evacuation is given, the list of shelters that's open, how it's going to be there, public transportation, how you can get to which shelters with what pets, which ones are filling up, which ones you probably are not going to have enough time to make it to and to seek alternate ones. But the county will be the ones determining what shelters to open at what point. We can only pass along the information, but if you want a main tap to that type of information, again, 311 miami-dade.gov, perfect resource. Important contacts, I'm not going to read these out because they'll be listed. Obviously, for us though, 911, call us. We will respond up until it is deemed unsafe to do so, at which point all emergency services do get suspended, whether it's police or fire. And the reason behind that is that it becomes a hazard. You get a fire truck out on the road and 75-mile-an-hour winds, it's going to be a hazard. We're never going to get to your hazard. And, so please just keep that in mind. Again, during the storm, it's not a good time to be out walking your dog if you're in the eye of the hurricane and the weather looks good. That quickly changes. Like I said, this information will be posted, so I'm not going to bother you guys with going through it. That is it for me. So I will yield to the higher expert, and you are good to go, Brian.
All right, thank you, Nick. Yeah, definitely good material in there, and I'm going to only briefly mention a little bit of it, so not too much in common there. So that's also good. But I'm going to kind of go over the big picture of hurricanes, some overall information, some aspects of the different threats that they pose. When we might expect the worst on average, all that sort of stuff. So let's just jump in here with starting off with what is a hurricane for all the people who are new here. And it's really just a large organized low pressure system, and it needs a warm ocean. So that's pretty much it in a sentence. A mature hurricane has an eye wall, and then spiral rain bands outside of that. Take a cross section through a hurricane right through there. You kind of have something that looks like that, where you have the eye in the middle, winds spiral inward at the ground level toward the eye wall. And then these rain bands are outside of that, and they can be very strong too. The strongest winds in hurricane are in the eye wall, but the rain bands aren't anything to mess around with either. The wind speed does decrease very rapidly away from the eye wall. So if you manage to not get hit by the eye wall, you really lucked out. Some terms that you will certainly hear or have heard, tropical depressions, tropical storms, hurricanes, they're all tropical cyclones. So that's just kind of the blanket term for all those things. In the Atlantic, we classify hurricanes by the Saffir-Simpson scale. So that's the category 1 through 5 scale that we're pretty well acquainted with. And down here in the lower right is just a radar loop of Hurricane Michael back in 2018, the most recent category 5 hurricane to make landfall in the US. And I put that in there because it nicely shows all of the features. The eye wall is this central small ring here, and that's where those category 5 winds are. And then they decrease very quickly as you go out. But you can see some of these rain bands out here that are strong too. All right, and this is purely just for eye candy because everyone likes that now and then. This was a Hurricane Dorian, also a category 5, sitting right over the northernmost Bahamas and right off our coast. That's us off there on the left side. We got very, very lucky with that one because not only was this a category 5 right next to us, it actually stalled for about 2 days as a category 5 hurricane over the Bahamas. It was just unimaginably awful. So while it looks like eye candy from above, if you're down on the ground level of that, it doesn't get worse. So one of the first big points that I will make is this phrase, there's more to the story than the category. And I'll bring up a few points of what that means. The Saffir-Simpson category rating is only referring to the peak sustained wind in the storm. So the rest of the storm, such as the rain bands and all that, not at all accounted for in that single number. The other hazard that travels along with hurricanes is tornadoes, and some hurricanes spawn just a few tornadoes, some spawn 100. It's just they're usually in the rain bands, so they're not in the eye wall. So you have those far-reaching rain bands, and you have they're generally not strong tornadoes. They're on the lower end, which still isn't good, and they tend to move very quickly. So if you are lucky enough to get a tornado warning from it, it's going to be brief because they're moving at 60 miles an hour sometimes. Of course, there's the coastal flooding from storm surge, and that is certainly not isolated to a small region. You can get pretty significant storm surge pretty far from the storm. Heavy rain is, of course, a big one. And Nick alluded to this, and I'll bring it up again. We had to get beyond it's a category 1 mentality, because that, again, is only referring to the peak sustained wind speed. There's a lot of other hazards that are worse. This stat is from the National Hurricane Center a few months ago. So we've had actually quite a lot of landfalling hurricanes in the US during this period, not here, but anyway, wind was only responsible for 15% of fatalities in the US, even though that's what the category system revolves around, is that wind speed. Rain is 65% of deaths. So put that in perspective when you're thinking of, it's only a category 1. Doesn't take even a hurricane to make a lot of rain. And then this is a point that I think is really useful for anyone that was here during Irma. It was a mess, to put it nicely. But it was a tropical storm here, an upper end tropical storm, not quite a category 1 hurricane for us. Because at an upper end tropical storm, that's really good at messing up trees. And it did. It messed up a lot of trees, but it's not quite strong enough to really rip off roofs and all the other wind hazards that we think of. So, that's something to think about too, that was an upper end tropical storm, and think of what that did. This is another point I'd like to bring up is the size versus intensity. You can have two storms at the same intensity, like I've shown here. They're not recent examples, but it doesn't matter. They're still hurricanes. Hurricane Floyd, 99, and Hurricane Andrew, 92. Same intensity. So both the category, I think 4 at this point. And obviously they don't look the same. One is a very large category 4 hurricane and one's a very small category 4 hurricane. So it's the same intensity, but the larger a storm is, the more area it will affect with wind, rain, and storm surge. So that's an important factor. And then related to intensity, I want to go over intensity change. This is kind of a wild little piece of information that I think is not the most relaxing bit of information to have. Although track and intensity forecasting have improved a lot, this rapid intensification is still pretty hard to get right. And that's where storms, the intensity of the storm increases by at least 35 miles per hour in a day. Well, it just so happens that all 4 of the storms that made landfall at Category 5 intensity were only tropical storms 3 days before they hit. So yeah, that's not good. So we have the 1935 hurricane that hit the Keys. We have Hurricane Camille in 1969, Andrew in 92, and Michael in 2018. All of them were tropical storms 3 days before hitting as Category 5s. I just threw this in recently, but these were the 3-day forecast of intensity. 75 miles per hour hitting South Florida. No, it was 165. And Michael was forecast to be a peak intensity of 100 miles per hour at landfall, and then it was 160. The storm before that, we didn't make 3-day intensity forecasts, so obviously that doesn't count. But this hurricane 1935 remains the most intense hurricane to ever hit the US, 185 miles per hour. All right, I have a few slides on the cone because this is one of my pet peeves, and I know it's a greatly misunderstood thing, and that's fine because I don't know if it was ever really explained well when it first came out, which incidentally was 20 years ago. This is the cone's 20th anniversary in 2022. So all it's doing is showing where the center of the storm might track with a 2/3 likelihood. So it means there's still a 1/3 chance that the center of the storm will track outside the cone. Okay, the cone gets larger at longer forecast times because of increased uncertainty. So it has nothing to do with the size of the storm. It's just the further on into the future you go, the harder it is to know the future. So it's just that spread is just because of that. And the Hurricane Center uses the same exact size cone for all season, for all storms, every forecast, from A to Z, you know. So all year long, you're going to have the exact same cone. Although in reality, there's actually more uncertainty in some situations than others. Some situations, if you could make the cone even smaller because we really know where it's going to go. And other times it's like, well, you wish you could just draw it 5 times bigger because it's pretty hard to tell. And this is a figure I make and update each year, but the size of the cone pretty much shrinks each year as track forecasts improve. So this is an example hurricane here with a track that just happens to reach South Florida. The cone in purple is what the cone was in 2003. And the cone in red is what that would look like for that storm in 2022. So it does change from one year to the next. It just doesn't change size within a year. All right, one more on this. This is a really important point. Nothing special happens at the edge of the cone. This is, I think, one of the great misunderstandings of it. Being inside of the cone does not necessarily mean you're in danger. And being outside of it doesn't necessarily mean all is well. The storm is much larger than the center line of the track and larger than the cone. And the impacts from a hurricane extend far from the cone. This is an example that, again, from 2017, you might recognize. This was Hurricane Irma, and this was the actual cone at the time. Well, almost all of the hurricane is outside of the cone. So clearly, if you're outside the cone, it does not mean all is well, right? So what I did here, I overlaid, this is the area of tropical storm force winds that was actually in Irma. Well, again, that's almost entirely outside the cone. So don't focus on being in or out of it. That's not what it's intended to be. The track forecast cone is not an impacts cone. When this is posted online, you'll be able to click on that link and get more info on the cone than you probably want, but it's there. Okay, moving on to the climatology. As Nick mentioned, we have 6 months of hurricane season, half the year we spend in it, but only August, September, and October are really the meat of it. The activity is generally pretty mild in June and July and November. Not always, of course, but for the most part. And so we highlight that here. So these 3 months, half of the hurricane season are really the heart of it. And we just happen to sneak into it right now. We're just here in the first week of August. And looking at it by another metric called accumulated cyclone energy, I'm not going to get into how it's defined, but it's a single number that encompasses kind of the intensities and lifetimes of storms. So it's not related to the number of named storms or anything like that. You could have 3 weaker storms create as much ACE as 1 stronger storm, for example. But I wanted to highlight this. This is showing how, on average, the ACE goes during the course of the year up to 100% of its average value by the end of hurricane season. And by this metric, half of the season's total activity occurs in just 1 month. This is August 29th to September 28th here, and you go from 25% to 75%. So that is really the meat of the season. Zooming in on us, I drew a circle 100 miles around us and looked at all the hurricanes since 1851, which is when records begin, and broke it down by month of hurricane season. So June, July, August, September, October, November, 56 of them. And about half of them come from the east and about half from the west. And by east and west, I mean, east, southeast, east, southeast, any easterly component, and likewise with west. So, again, those big 3 months of August, September, and October. During August and September, they're generally coming at us from the east. During October, they're generally coming at us from the west. So, as you can see on these maps, October is actually our big month for action here historically. More than August and more than September. And the average return, if you just take these number of years, 1851 to 2021, divided by 56, you're right around 3 years for an average. But that does not mean you're going to get 1 every 3 years. That's just the average. You can go 6 or 8 years between them. We have gotten 2 in a month. We certainly hope that doesn't happen again, but it can. This is another key point. It only takes one phrase, and I think you all know where this is going to go because everyone uses this example for this phrase. But and this is partly why I am not going to talk about what the outlook is for the whole season in terms of number of storms, because regardless of how active the season is expected to be, any of the storms that form could affect land or us. And so this example from 2020, which was quite a season, the record number of named storms, 30 named storms and 14 hurricanes. None affected us as hurricanes. We scraped through that one in good shape. Well, for those who guessed where I was going with this, in 1992, very, very low season, very inactive. But one of them just happened to make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane in South Florida. So it doesn't matter how many there are. All that matters is what hits you, right? So don't worry about what the season forecast is. Let's just take it one at a time and see what comes here, and hopefully none. This is also good for kind of a luck perspective, I guess, but these three hurricanes in 2016, 17, and 19 were extremely close to us as Category 3 and 4 hurricanes, and we came out of them pretty unscathed. The hurricane force wind swaths, which is this green shading, the red shading, and the orange shading, we're just 25 to 95 miles from us. And you see this whole urban corridor just sneaking in the cracks there. Luck is an understatement. You know, and obviously that's not going to always be the case, but I guess something to point out too with this is it's good to not think of hurricanes as earthquakes. I think that's maybe a misconception. The longer you go without one does not make you more likely to get one. Like with an earthquake, you think of the plates shifting and they're locking and they're grinding, and eventually they have to release pressure, and that pressure can just build and build and build. And then you kind of do worry like, okay, well, when it does release, it's going to be bad. Well, hurricanes have no way of knowing what last year did or what last month did. If you get two in a month, they don't care. If you get one 9 years after the other, they don't care. So again, this is kind of a good thing to keep in mind. And this is kind of an interesting topic for us to talk about storm surge. There could be people on this or who will watch it who don't live in Biscayne Park, and you actually might have property on either the bay or the ocean. But here in Biscayne Park, we don't. But I'm still going to bring it up, and you'll see why. Really, all storm surge is just ocean water being pushed onshore. And it can occur very rapidly. This can catch people off guard, and it kills a lot of people. There's a lot of things that go into storm surge. It's a hard thing to forecast, but there are storm surge watches and warnings would be issued if needed. There's this term called storm tide, and that's actually the number that matters. That's the combination of the astronomical tide and the storm surge. So if the storm surge comes at low tide versus high tide, that makes a difference. Like I said, we don't have any bayfront or oceanfront property here. Some people watching might, and we can address that offline. But for us, the Biscayne Canal, that C8 canal, is our weak link. And so on this next slide, I'm going to show you the worst case storm surge from Category 1 to 5 hurricanes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and these are in feet above ground. So you see I outlined Biscayne Park in the purple wedge. We don't really start having noticeable issues till the Category 3 realm. The Category 4 and 5, where we're up to 6+ feet. The red is 9+ feet. We don't have any of that, but you can kind of see, though, that this is where the ocean water would make its way in, is through that and then spread into town from that point. So it's just good to be aware of that. We're not immune to storm surge. And Nick pointed this out, so this is excellent, but know your zone, as he said, and indeed we are in zones C and D. I mean, unfortunately, it splits at, I guess, 119th Street. That's these crude squares that you see over here were not designed to include all of Biscayne Park. Obviously, they're just a crude set of squares, and we just happen to be sliced into D a little bit. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Excuse me. If and when the time comes and there's a mandatory evacuation, it would be based on this, on storm surge risk, not on wind. And again, on the online version of this, you'll be able to click on here and get this map and zoom into wherever you live. But in Biscayne Park, we're generally zone C. So if you are listening as a hurricane's coming and they say zone C, well, that's us. And this relates to that as well, to storm surge, but also to rainfall, probably even more so. This is a zoomed in topographic map of Biscayne Park, with Brown being relatively high, 8 feet or higher in brown, and rather low, 3 feet or less in the deep blues. And I made it scale that way so it really shows the highs and lows pretty well, because obviously it's generally pretty flat, but when you exaggerate the scale, you can bring out some of those important features. And they are important because these low-lying blue areas in town, they do flood in heavy rain, and they will flood if we ever get a storm surge making it up here. But as we've seen with even things that aren't quite hurricanes, we have big problems with heavy rain, as everywhere does around here, because it's flat and water doesn't drain very well. But it can cause big problems to roads, drain fields and septic tanks, and obviously the houses too. So anyway, it's good to be aware of this, that we do have spots that are low and historically worse for flooding. So after a heavy rain, those are the places that need to be inspected and helped first. And I'm going to go through this super quick because Nick already talked about most of this. So trees is our big thing. So proper pruning. You can get trees and limbs taking out electricity, bringing both the gas lines with them. I mean, they have a lot of issues. So proper pruning is very important to reduce all of these risks. So now is the time to do this. Don't, as Nick said, don't start cutting things out when a storm is coming. Do it now when there's nothing coming. Check all your emergency supplies, verify your insurance coverage. You're not going to be able to call up your agent when there's a hurricane a few days away and say, oh, I would like to up my coverage. No. And then Nick also mentioned this, but have a plan and an alternate plan. But if you choose to remain here in your house, plan on being off grid for at least 3 days, maybe even a week if you can. I know it's a lot, but at least 3 days though, of food, medicine, water for you and your pets. And evacuation shelters are always an option, but they should be a last resort. They're pretty awful. But if you have to do it, it beats the alternative. And then that's it. I'll leave some contact info up here and take questions. I think questions for Nick too, since we didn't stop between us. So thank you.
Absolutely. If there's anybody who would like to ask a question or anything like that, please feel free to raise your hand. You can do that on the bottom of your screen. Is there anyone with a question? Mac, okay. Here you go. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Sure.
Hey, I could not find the hand raising feature thing. Sorry about that. Hey, if I ask you something that you covered, I apologize. I was tuning in, but I think this is more of a question for Commander Wolfschlager or Mario more than Brian. So at what point do you declare a state of emergency here in Biscayne Park when a storm is coming, whether it's a named storm or not. And what does it imply, and what happens after an emergency has been declared? Why do we do that? What does that enable the village to do?
So we typically follow the lead that Miami-Dade County will go through. So once the county has declared a state of emergency, then we will follow suit with a declaration as well. Those are done in order to be able to access any reimbursable funds needed for recovery from a storm or something like that. The village can declare a state of emergency by itself if we have something that is unique to the village. But in these type of situations where the entire county is going to be affected, we would follow suit. In order for FEMA or the federal government, depending on the size and the amount of damage that it would create within the area, for them to qualify the storm to reimburse municipalities or local governments, the entire county would have to have a certain level of damage and then dollars. So that is why it's important for us to be able to quantify and be able to say how much damage and how much dollar-wise that damage has cost to reimburse, because without that, then it doesn't, it might not qualify for the storm for FEMA reimbursement of funds. So we make sure that we're following the county. Those are typically done once a watch is already in place and we're going into a warning. Once we do a warning where the impact of a storm is imminent, is when the county mayor will declare a state of emergency for the county, and then you will see, well, between the county, Miami Beach, and Miami, it's always a race to try to see who does it first. But then once the county does it, you see basically every municipality underneath start declaring theirs and issuing theirs, while the other departments within the village are going to be preparing for the storm that's going out. And let's not also forget, especially during the watch phase, I am sending and I am trying to get all of our employees, especially our essential employees, to go home and prep their houses first so that they can be back here in the village. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so in other words, there's an administrative function to a state of emergency that allows you to prepare to recoup the money that we spend on cleanup and things like that. But it actually happens before the storm hits. You don't have to wait for there to be damage. You declare it in advance. Does it allow the police department to do anything specific regarding residents and how we should, what we're allowed to do, being outside, not leaving? I mean, is there an impact in terms of public safety as well?
It's really going to depend on the storm that we have. Typically, we would not issue a curfew unless it's absolutely necessary. The last time either the county or other municipalities issued any kind of curfews was at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And we were in certain cities and the county, we're still seeing large groups of people gathering at night at restaurants or bars. So in order to kind of control the crowd, but not every city does that. So it's really dependent on the situation. And for the most part, it's up to the individual municipality and the law enforcement officers in that municipality to enforce some type of, for police, a declaration of emergency typically also means that the police officers work what's called an Alpha Bravo shift, which is essentially 12-hour shifts. But our officers are already working 12-hour shifts just because of the amount of officers we have to be able to have constant coverage and everything like that. So for shift-wise, nothing for our officers change. And I know, Chief, I know you might want to kind of jump in here, see if you have any other words. I'm asking to unmute yourself as well.
Yeah, Mr. Manager, thank you. A couple of things just to add really quick. During the hurricane, I work in conjunction with the manager. I wear two hats, one of the chief of police and the other one as the emergency incident commander for the village. So you asked a very specific question, Commissioner Kennedy. and I want to answer that. Yes, as the emergency incident commander, myself and the manager work together, disseminate information during the pre-stages of the that we're informed that a hurricane is heading in our direction. So we do both pre, during, and post. We disseminate information just so people begin the preparations. So the residents have an understanding. So we make sure that those that maybe don't have access to radio or televisions, or those who are elderly or require special services, we can provide the appropriate assistance. So we do work together, and we do disseminate information, and we monitor both pre, during, and post, both from the emergency management side and from the police side. In addition to the officers that we have on Alpha Bravo or 1212, like the manager is saying, we have all the reserves that we call in, and we disseminate them during the different shifts. So it assists us in road closures, disseminating if we have anything to disseminate at that time, like if it's water or ice or anything that may be needed to assist public works while they're providing, removing trees, or the debris company while they're in the process of doing their removal. I think one of the important things that Brian and Nick touched on during post-hurricane, after the hurricane has gone by, one of the important things, something that happens all the time, obviously we know we have flooding issues in the village, is that we have down wires and we have other issues. This is why it's important that, I know we get fever, they call it cabin fever, I believe, and everybody wants to come outside. It's the quicker that we allow the emergency services to be able to clear streets, take the proper documentation, and give the all clear to everybody, then it expedites the process. Because if we also at the same time have to tell people divert the traffic, tell people to stop walking and all that, it just really hinders the process, and that's extremely, extremely important.
May I ask you a follow-up question, Chief, to something you just touched on that I think is important, and that is regarding the, you guys maintain a list, and the name of the list escapes me, but it's elderly residents of the village that you guys keep an extra eye on during situations like that. How is that list maintained, and how can people, we have a lot of new residents moving in and out of the village, right? How do people get their name on the list, or get one of their neighbors or family members on that list, and exactly what do you guys use that list for?
I will kind of jump in there. We do have a bit of a running list. However, we ask that residents or anyone, the county actually maintains a list of anyone who will need assistance for evacuation or anything like that. We do have some handbooks, and I'll grab one now. But we have some here at Village Hall if anybody wants to come and pick theirs up. And I think we put some at the rec center, Nick, if I'm not mistaken, and we've got at the police station as well, where you can sign up for the county to come and assist with evacuation. So the county will come themselves. They have a group and a task force, or officers or whatnot, or even paramedics that will come, and they will help move you out of the room and take you to an evacuation area where you will be, or your family will be safe. We have tried to maintain a list as best as we can, and updated an old one that we had. But outside of that, every so often we'll try to go back to it and try to update it. But we don't. There's nothing online or anything like that where we go and we try to get that. Bob, I know you've had your hand up for quite a while. I'm going to ask that you unmute yourself. There you go. Okay. And then from there, I saw resident Louis DeRamondo that also wanted to say, so we'll go to him next.
Okay. I want to, first of all, thank the presentation that was given to our hurricane expert, Brian Nolte. I think he did a great job. It was very clear. And it really, I think most of the residents need to go ahead and be looking at this. The second thing, I would like to go ahead and praise the manager for having this presentation. Also, for the explanation that the residents need to stay home or go to their shelters. Don't pile trash out there during a hurricane. Wait till the city has had a chance to go through, take photographs and stuff, what was happened to the city property to get their proper reimbursements. Listen to what the city is saying. Also, too, I would wish that the city would go ahead and, since this will be on YouTube, hopefully, that a flyer or something would go out to all of the residents to go ahead and look at the YouTube of this, because I'm sorry to say, you didn't get too much of a participation, and to go ahead and maybe have more residents to go ahead and that weren't there, and when they find out how great of a presentation this was, to go ahead and be looking at it. And thank you for all of this.
Thank you. We'll definitely see and be able to promote the video on YouTube so that people can come back and watch it. I'm going to ask Mr. Louis DiRomano to unmute himself. Okay, go ahead. You got a question?
Yeah. Well, a couple of weeks ago, me and you, Mario, had a recorded back and forth questions about the flooding on my street. And I was asking you, why isn't my street involved or part of the 5 designated flooding areas that flood the most? And you said of the 5, and was recorded, and Commander Nick was there recording it, or part of the recording. You said that my street, 108th Street and Northeast 10th Avenue, does not flood enough, and my block and my street is excluded from the 5 designated more important locations within the village of Biscayne Park. Now, Mario, you were not here for Hurricane Irma, okay? I don't think, Chief, I don't think you were here for Hurricane Irma either, correct? I can't hear what he's saying.
No, you.
Chief, were you here for Irma?
No, sir, I was not.
Okay.
I was at the city of Miami. I worked both of them, but at the city of Miami.
Okay, fine. That's why I didn't ask the question of you. But I know Nick was here. Why? I was told by Diaz that the water isn't deep enough, okay, and that I could walk through the water to my car. And he determined, and it's his determination that I should not be included in these 5 zones that he is going to target first for heavy flooding. He doesn't have the training, doesn't have the information other than coming by and taking a picture, doesn't have the background, okay, and doesn't know how severe my property was flooded because of the storm sewers, the storm drains that we have on Northeast 108th Street and Northeast 10th Avenue. What do I need to do to have Diaz put my street and put my property back on the areas that are most affected with floods? You told me that it's okay that I could walk through my septic tank, dirty water to my car. I cannot. Okay, I'm partially disabled. I have a walking problem. Okay, my ankles, I have to go for surgery soon to restore one ankle at a time. That's a 1-year process, 6 months at a time. So, Kennedy, you're a current commissioner. Everyone is aware that I am running to be a commissioner to address a lot of issues that aren't being addressed by Mario Diaz. Okay, there is some favoritism. He cannot, and he shouldn't be allowed to remove Northeast 108th Street and Northeast 10th Avenue from being a high-risk area of flooding. I need the same protection that the other 5 areas are being addressed. I asked them, are we going to get a pump if needed? Did you buy one? It's coming. Where is it? It's not delivered yet. Did you get it delivered, Mario? Yes or no?
I'll wait until you're done, and then I'll respond to all of your comments, sir.
I'm
So
done.
okay.
Did you get the pump delivered, and where is
I'll
it?
answer now. I'll answer now. So the to address your immediate question with regard to the pump was being built. We're still waiting for that delivery. We do have that order already in place, and the funds are available to make that. So once the pump gets finalized and completed, they'll send it right over. I did not say that we removed you from the 5 areas. What I did say is that we have many areas within the village and many streets within the village that have flooding issues, and that your street is not the only one. Unfortunately, the village does not have funding to be able to install stormwater French drains, essentially, which is what we're doing throughout the entire village all at once. And so the first phase of the projects are 5 areas that do have severe flooding. And this is where the comparison with your street and maybe is where some of the confusion would be. These areas, even after more than 24 hours, have several hundred gallons of water still of stagnant water on the street, in which even in this recent rainstorm that we had in June, the next day, your street was essentially dry. Not saying that on your private property, there was not water still there, but the street was still at a level where it was drying out, where these other areas still, even after 48 hours, still had knee-high water in areas. And so those were the areas that were identified to get the construction areas first. Your street of 108 is still part of the larger project within the village, but as you correctly pointed out, it's not the first street that will receive it. So as the village is able to identify and receive further funding for these construction projects, which, mind you, is going to run into the millions of dollars category, then each next phase will continue to move forward as we're able to ascertain that kind of funding to go forward. And yes, on your street, the following day, you did have the ability to walk out of your home, get in your car, and drive out, in which in other areas, they did not have that opportunity to do that because the water was still even reaching so far high that it was reaching almost into their front doors. You can easily, when you want, you can go to 121st Street and 11th Avenue when these areas are, when it's that kind of rain and we receive that amount of volume. And you can easily see where water is going into the homes, where on 108th, luckily there are large front yards before the front doors come in. And so at least in this last rain event, did not have the water going into the houses. So yes, 108th Street will get stormwater drainage. Is it getting it now in the first round? No. When will it get it? Great question. We're working to try to identify funding so that we can move that forward. This past fiscal year, in order just to pay for the first 5 projects that we had, not only are we using money from the county CITT fund, which there were no projects in the village done for the past 10 years, which is why we've got about $300,000 to $350,000 to use from that. Luckily, we were able to stop the county from taking that money back. But to match that, we were able to get the state to give us another $350,000 to be able to do that. And then the remaining funds needed to pay for that one project, which is essentially about $1 million, between $1 million and $1.1 million, is future years of CITT money that we're also using to do that. So that is how we're able to do that. Unfortunately, these projects are going to cost more than just $10,000 or $20,000. They cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to put in. And even then, these projects won't be solving the flooding issue on the streets. They're going to help manage it, but they won't be solving anything. And every street, as when we have the pump or when we get the water trucks that we use during June, we try to rotate as much as we can so that we can help manage that. And any street that has flooding, there'll be sent to. Although, just to clarify, neither the water pump nor a vacuum truck will be going onto private property to help suck up or move any of that water. That water is strictly to be able to get the street open and easy for regular travel to go through. It does help in the greater scheme of things, but it's not going to an individual property to move any water. Do we have any other questions from any of our residents? Any other residents? Okay, I don't see. Does anybody want to make a comment again? Is there another question from anyone who's spoken in the past already? Okay, I see Mr. Diamante speaking, so I'll give him the opportunity again. I'm going to ask that you unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. Why are we only ordering one pump when this is to install sewage in storm drains for the entire village? We're talking 10, 15, 20 year out. Why are we ordering one pump? Why is it August 3rd and we don't have this pump? It cannot be that you can't get this pump throughout the United States or out of the country quick enough. Suppose there's a rainstorm in 2 weeks from now. What are you waiting for? It's already been more than 6 to 8 weeks since the recorded conversation we had with Commander Nick, and the pump still hasn't arrived. Also, the Village of Biscayne Park should own and buy and purchase 2 vacuum trucks because the flooding is going to be a continuous problem, okay? Mario won't be around here in 5 or 10 years. The current commissioners won't be around. I might not be around. The chief, the police chief, the commander, none of us might be around, and we're going to still be flooding. You need to buy 2 vacuum trucks, and a minimum of 4 pumps should be at the public works. And don't tell me you don't have enough money. I've told you before, you borrowed the money, okay? The village could afford to borrow the money this is a public safety issue. Forget about the long stories, Mario. You give a lot of long stories. You're a good storyteller, okay? But let's get to the facts. The facts is that the village needs to purchase 3, 4, 2, not 1. And we still don't have the first one you talked about 2 months ago. We still don't have that one. You need to purchase 2 trucks because we're not getting any. The commission, these commissions that we have now run for 4 years. In 4 years, we don't know who's gonna be in charge. You're not gonna be here in 4 years. Kennedy's not gonna be here in 4 years. I'm not gonna run. Who knows if I'm gonna be here in 4 years? I'm running, okay, to be a commissioner, okay, to make things happen quicker. This is public safety, okay? Public safety. The way you're explaining it and your definition and your explanation of it, you're a great storyteller. You must pre-write the scripts before you speak or have notes ready because you tell the same story over and over and over.
Okay. All right, I'm going to give someone else an opportunity to speak.
There's nobody listening. Nobody attends these things. That's the reason why I'm running for commissioner. Nobody attends. You have 0 attendance.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anybody else? Commissioner Kennedy, did you want to say any parting words? Okay. Chief, Nick, and Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for the presentation. Both Brian and Nick have sent me a PDF of the presentation, so I'm going to be posting that up onto our website so you can see those individual slides. And this is being live streamed on YouTube, so you can always go back to it. But we'll make sure to let everybody know and provide a link even on Nextdoor so that people can come back to the video and watch. If anybody has a question or something that they wish to ask, maybe they just didn't want to talk or anything like that, please feel free to send us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Chief, did you want to say some parting words?
I'm going to be really quick. just really quick, remember, preparation, knowledge, and being proactive is going to save everybody's life, and it's going to make life a lot easier. Why do I say that? Remember the shelters with the pets. If you know you're going to have an issue, try to be one of the first ones in the shelters. Be proactive. Try to get the assistance you need. Reach out to me. Preparation. If you have all the preparations, then you're not being reactive. You're being proactive. Okay. And knowledge. It's important to have knowledge of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it can happen, which is what Brian was alluding to. So these three things are key during these critical incidents and during these storms. Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming on board and spending some time with us. Stay safe. And again, if you need to reach out to us,